Welcome, Administrator Nolen. Thank you for coming before the committee, and I know you'll be back again, although that will not stop me from going beyond the stated topic of this hearing, but I'm going to start with the stated topic of this hearing. The NOTAM failure happened right on the heels of a failure with Southwest Airlines. We had Southwest leadership testifying last week about their meltdown during the holidays. And I want to raise a similar concern for the FAA that I raised with Southwest. When something goes wrong and flights are canceled or delayed to the degree that they were during both of these situations, airports need to hear from you. They need to hear, in the case of Southwest, from Southwest. I learned from several Wisconsin airports that they just did not receive any type of proactive communication from the agency about the impacts of the NOTAM failure. They only received information necessary to respond to confused and frustrated travelers after reaching out, themselves to FAA's local regional office. It's my expectation in situations like these that FAA should provide proactive and real-time updates and guidance to our nation's airports. Can you commit to that moving forward and tell me how you would approach that should we ever have a failure like this or similar disruption that requires this type of communication?
Well, Senator Baldwin, thank you so much for the question there. But let me say, just to set the record straight, throughout the course of every day, there are industry calls from our National Command Center every 2 hours. In addition, on the January 10th, we also opened up a hotline at 8 p.m. on the night of January 10th, and we had anyone could call into that meeting, airlines, airports, and other users of the system. So that was open, and then we were talking with our industry stakeholders throughout the night. On the following morning, when I instituted the ground stop, that information also went out nationwide to all airports, and we have roughly 5,000 airports in the country, and so all of that. And as well, our Office of Airports also reached out to provide updates on the NOTAM outages that morning, early that morning of January 11th. And certainly, we also updated that once the NOTAM was canceled. But your point is well taken. We will go back and just scrub to say, can we even improve our communication process? And we'll commit to you that we'll do just that.
I appreciate that. Congress took action in the last FAA reauthorization, or the 2018 FAA reauthorization, to move airports away from firefighting foams that contain PFAS. Yet, airports are still without any approved alternatives. Airports in my state are eager to transition away towards safer alternatives and are anxiously awaiting an approved alternative from the FAA. I will note that there are now numerous communities in Wisconsin whose groundwater has been contaminated with PFAS, and they are, in many cases, immediately adjacent to an operating airport. I am aware that the Department of Defense, which has a strong role to play here, of course, recently released a military specification outlining its requirement for firefighting foams that do not contain PFAS. So given that update, what can you tell me, and what do you see as the likely timeline for finally giving airports PFAS-free alternatives, and how does the agency see its role in assisting airports throughout this transition process that we hope will be forthcoming?
A good question there. We are still working through that. So our Associate Administrator for Airports is on point in terms of working through this issue of PFAS. We recognize as one of supply as we look to an alternative. As you mentioned, the new mil spec is out. airports are allowed to use for an actual emergency. And then we've got procedures where they can test without discharging PFAS onto the ramp and keeping that from getting into the water tables. So we're working through the process of how we get there. We recognize it will take us some time. What I can commit to you is we'll follow up with you, with your staff, in terms of what those actual timelines are as they become available to us.
I just would want to stress and press for all due but considered speed on this. The resources that we are committing at the federal level to try to assist communities with getting a clean and safe water supply after contamination are in the billions. And we shouldn't be prolonging this in any way. So I certainly want to press for timely action on this. I know at the local fire department level, which obviously is different than aviation firefighting, but they are finding various firefighting foams that are working very effectively that do not contain PFAS. It seems to me that that testing can be happening at the federal level and get something in the queue as soon as possible.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. Senator Schmidt.